Welcome to Daily Scripture Reading. I do not own the rights to this music. These are scriptures on finances and giving. I will read both the King James Version and the Amplified Version. Genesis chapter 41. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I've never seen in all the land of Egypt, for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, or it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh. And let them keep food in the cities, and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had. And they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before the Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. The Amplified Version of Genesis 41. After 2 full years, Pharaoh dreamed that he stood by the river Nile. And behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 well-favored cows, sleek and handsome and fat. And they grazed in the reed grass in a marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river Nile, ill-favored and gaunt and ugly, and stood by the fat cows on the bank of the river Nile. And the ill-favored, gaunt, and ugly cows ate up the 7 well-favored and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, but he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came out on one stalk, plump and good. And behold, after them 7 ears of grain sprouted, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the 7 thin ears of grain devoured the 7 plump and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So when morning came, his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but not one could interpret them to him. Then the chief butler said to Pharaoh, I remember my faults today, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. We dreamed a dream in the same night, he and I. We dreamed each of us according to the significance of the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard and chief executioner. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them to us, to each man according to the significance of his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came to pass. I was restored to my office as chief butler, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. But Joseph first shaved himself, changed his clothes, and made himself presentable. Then he came into Pharaoh's presence. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. And I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream and interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, It is not in me. God, not I, will give Pharaoh a favorable answer of peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood on the bank of the river Nile, and behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 fat, sleek, and handsome cows, and they grazed in the reed grass of a marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them, undernourished, gaunt, and ugly, just skin and bones, such emaciated animals as I have never seen in all of Egypt. And the lean and ill-favored cows ate up the 7 fat cows that had come first. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be detected and known that they had eaten them, for they were still as thin and emaciated as at the beginning. Then I awoke, but again I fell asleep and dreamed. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain growing on one stalk, plump and good. And behold, 7 other ears withered, thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. Now I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could tell me what it meant. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The 2 dreams are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. The 2 dreams are one in their meaning, and the 7 thin and ill-favored cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty ears of grain, blighted and shriveled by the east wind. They are 7 years of hunger and famine. This is the message, just as I have told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Take note, 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt are coming. Then there will come 7 years of hunger and famine, and there will be so much want that all the great abundance of the previous years will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. And hunger, destitution, starvation will exhaust, consume, finish the land. And the plenty will become quite unknown in the land because of that following famine, for it will be very woefully severe. That the dream was sent twice to Pharaoh and in two forms indicates that this thing which God will very soon bring to pass is fully prepared and established by God. So now, let Pharaoh seek out and provide a man discreet, understanding, proficient, and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt as governor. Let Pharaoh do this. Then let him select and appoint officers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the whole land of Egypt, in the 7 plenteous years, year by year. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the direction and authority of Pharaoh. And let them retain food in fortified granaries in the cities. And that food shall be put in store for the country against the 7 years of hunger and famine that are to come upon the land of Egypt, so that the land may not be ruined and cut off by the famine. And the plan seemed good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find this man's equal, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Forasmuch as your God has shown you all this, there is nobody as intelligent and discreet and understanding and wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed according to your word, with reverence, submission, and obedience. Only in matters of the throne will I be greater than you are." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in official vestments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. He made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and officials cried before him, "Bow the knee." And he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph made an inspection tour of all the land of Egypt. Joseph, who had been in Egypt 13 years, was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went about his duties through all the land of Egypt. In the 7 abundant years, the earth brought forth by handfuls for each seed planted, and he gathered up all the surplus food of the 7 good years in the land of Egypt, and stored up the food in the cities. He stored away in each city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph gathered grain as the sand of the sea, very much, until he stopped counting, for it could not be measured. Now to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph called the firstborn Manasseh, making to forget. For God said, "He has made me forget all my toil and hardship and all my father's house." And the second he called Ephraim, to be fruitful. For he said, "God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." When the 7 years of plenty were ended in the land of Egypt, the 7 years of scarcity and famine began to come, as Joseph had said they would. The famine was in all the surrounding lands, but in all of Egypt there was food. But when all the land of Egypt was weakened with hunger, the people there cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh said to them, "All go to Joseph, What he says to do, all go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. When the famine was over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses, and so did the Egyptians, for the famine grew extremely distressing in the land of Egypt. And all countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the known earth. The end. God bless you, and thank you for joining me today.